February 24th, 1978. Plumas National Forest, California. Winter had locked the High Sierra in a deep freeze, burying the mountain passes under 8 feet of snow. It was a world of pure white silence, broken only by the grinding engine of a U.S. Forest Service snowplow, fighting to clear the path. The driver, a man who knew these mountains, immediately stopped. He saw something impossible, a shape, a color, a car. An old beige Mercury Monterey parked at a haphazard angle, its front wheels nosed into a snowbank as if it had simply given up. It was a ghost ship, stranded in a frozen sea. The doors were unlocked. He peered inside, and the scene that greeted him was more baffling than the car's very presence. The keys dangled from the ignition. The heater was switched to full blast, the dials frozen in their final position, but the engine was cold, dead. And then the details. The intimate human details that turned a curiosity into a chilling mystery. Jackets were draped over the seats as if their owners had just stepped out for a moment. Wallets lay in plain sight, holding cash and identification. A full picnic basket sat on the floor, alongside unopened bottles of beer. The gas gauge showed enough fuel to drive another 200 miles. Everything here was for survival. Everything but the will to use it. 5 young men had driven this car into the mountains, but they had simply walked away. They abandoned their only source of heat, their only shelter, their only connection to the world they knew. They walked away from their wallets, their beer, their jackets, wearing only light clothing into a sub-zero wilderness that offered nothing but a certain frozen death. It was the beginning of a mystery so profound, so inexplicable, a puzzle where every clue only deepened the cold, and the only thing waiting at the end of the trail was silence. Welcome to Behind the Yellow Tape. I'm Mimi, and here we share some of the most spine-chilling, gut-stirring, mysterious crime stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. So if mystery and crime is your cup of tea, then you'll definitely get your fill here. We upload every Wednesday at 6:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you love a midweek dose of suspense, whether from your favorite seat, the car, before bed, or during your favorite activity, then leave a like to help build the algorithm. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss an upload. Now, let's take a step behind the yellow tape. To truly grasp the strangeness of the empty car, you first have to know the men who filled it. They weren't reckless adventurers. They were 5 friends from Yuba City, all with mild intellectual disabilities, who had built a world of their own, a world where they looked out for each other. Picture them. Bill Sterling, 29, the unofficial leader with a sturdy build and responsible streak. A man with a quiet intensity, always at Bill's side, Jack Hewitt, 24, the youngest of the group, with a shy smile and eyes that trusted his friends completely. Ted Weir, 32, a gentle giant standing well over 6 feet tall with a kind, open face. And Gary Matthias, 25, an Army man veteran with a sharp military haircut, the one who carried the weight of schizophrenia but fought it with daily medication. On the night of February 24th, these 5 friends crowded into Ted Weir's gold beige Mercury Monterey. Their plan was simple: drive to Chico, watch their team play basketball, and come home. We have a few precious frames of their final normal hours. Grainy black and white CCTV footage from the Chico State Gymnasium. The 5 of them are a part of the crowd flowing out into the parking lot. You can see Jack Madruga laughing and smiling at something, his head thrown back. Ted Weir had his arm slung around someone's shoulder. They are just 5 faces in a sea of happy, departing fans, their breath making small clouds in the chilly night air. Alive. We know they made one more stop, a final mundane errand at a local store for chips and soda. And then the last concrete thread connecting them to the world, a call from a payphone. We don't have a recording, but we know the words. Spoken to a mother, a father. Cheerful, reassuring. We had a great time. We're headed back now. We'll see you soon. The words you say when your biggest concern is getting home before it gets too late. The silence that followed that call became a physical presence in the houses of Yuba City. As the night stretched on and no car pulled into the driveway, a whisper of worry began. By morning, it was a scream. The search launched with urgent, hopeful energy, but it was looking in the wrong place. Patrol cars slowly cruised the wide, familiar lanes of highways 99 and 70, their headlights sweeping over empty fields and dry irrigation ditches, looking for a glint of gold beige metal, any sign of a skid mark or a breakdown. Meanwhile, in quiet homes, family hovered by telephones that refused to ring. Every silent minute that ticked by was a wait, the cheerful "see you soon" from the night before, now echoing like a taunt in the crushing quiet. They were searching for a missing car on the roads it was supposed to be on. They never thought to look for it 70 miles in the wrong direction, on a road that should have been impossible for them to find, let alone attempt. A narrow, twisting Forest Service road. A road that was officially closed for winter. A road that climbed high into the frozen teeth of the Sierra. A road that, as search planes would later discover, simply stopped. It was there. At the end of that forgotten path, buried under a mountain of snow, that their car waited, empty. For 4 agonizing months, the case was a ghost, a dead end. The families held on to a fragile hope that the men had simply gotten lost, maybe found shelter somewhere. Then, in June of 1978, as the sun finally beat down and the deep snowpack in the high Sierras began its slow retreat, a group of motorcyclists exploring the newly accessible backcountry stumbled into a scene of pure, unadulterated horror. 19 miles from the abandoned Mercury, down a near impassable lodging road, they found a remote Forest Service cabin. It was a simple, sturdy structure meant to offer emergency shelter to stranded hikers or forest workers. And inside, they made a discovery that would shatter the case wide open, only to plunge into a deeper, more disturbing mystery. They found the body of Ted Weir, the gentle giant. He was lying on a cot, emaciated, his large frame now just skin and bone. He was wrapped in makeshift blankets as if he had tried to keep warm. The coroner would later determine he had died of starvation and exposure, but the context made his death inexplicable. This cabin was not a death trap, it was a sanctuary. In one corner stood a pot-bellied wood-burning stove, and stacked neatly against the wall were cases upon cases of U.S. military sea rations, canned food designed to last for decades. There was enough food in that single room to have kept the man alive for years. And yet, the food was almost entirely untouched. Not a single can was properly opened. Investigators found one can of fruit cocktail that had been stabbed repeatedly with a knife. A few drops of syrup lapped up. That was it. Ted Weir had starved to death in a room full of food. Outside the cabin, the story grew even grimmer. As searchers fanned out, the melting snow revealed its secrets. The remains of Jack Madruga were discovered first. His body lying near a creek bed about half a mile from the cabin. He was still wearing his jacket, but it wasn't enough. Long after they found Bill Sterling, he was further away, his body positioned as if he had been crawling, making a final desperate attempt to move toward something, or away from it. Both men, the group's natural leaders, had succumbed to the brutal elements. They died in the open, exposed to the wind and cold, never making it to the shelter that stood just a mile away. a shelter that could have saved them. But it was the timeline that was the most baffling piece of this nightmare. Ted Weir had not died quickly. He had grown a full, thick beard during his ordeal. Forensic analysis suggested he had survived for up to 13 weeks after disappearing. He had shelter from the cold. He had a virtual supermarket of non-perishable food. He had survived long enough for his body to show the signs of a long, slow struggle. So the next question screamed into the silent woods. Why would Ted Weir starve to death just feet from salvation? Why would he stare at those stacks of canned food with a knife in his hand and open only one? It was a riddle that made no sense. A man had died of thirst while kneeling beside a fresh running stream. The cabin, meant to be a place of rescue, had become a chamber of unsolvable horrors. The official, tidy explanation is that it was a tragic accident, a wrong turn in the dark. The men, disoriented, drove up the mountain, got stuck in a snowbank, and in a moment of collective panic made a fatal decision to abandon their car and seek help on foot. But this theory doesn't just have holes, it collapses completely under the sheer weight of the evidence. Let's start with the wrong turn. This wasn't a single missed exit. To get to the place where the mercury was found, they had to execute a precise sequence of errors. They had to leave the well-lit 4-lane highway. They had to find a specific unmarked Forest Service road. And most damningly, they had to drive past multiple large official signs that read, "Road closed." This wasn't a simple mistake. It was a deliberate journey into isolation. Then there's the unexplained mileage. When the car was found, the odometer revealed a chilling detail. There were nearly 70 extra miles on the clock from the time they were last seen at the Chico payphone to the moment they got stuck. 70 miles. That's over an hour of driving. Where were they in that hour? What were they doing? They weren't lost. They were going somewhere. And then there are the missing two. The bodies of Gary Mathias, the Army veteran, and Jack Hewitt, the most dependable of the group, were never found. Not a bone, not a shred of clothing. They vanished from the face of the earth. Did they wander off disoriented to die in some ravine so deep it has kept their secret for decades? Or does their complete disappearance point to something else entirely? All these questions converge on the cabin, the heart of the nightmare. Why didn't they open the food? These were men who, while challenged, were perfectly capable of basic survival. Ted Weir survived for weeks. He had a knife, he had cans. Was he so psychologically shattered, so deeply traumatized, that he lost the will or the ability to perform the simple act of opening a can? Or was something or someone else preventing him? This is where the official story ends and the shadows of darker theories take over. Some point to the possibility of a sixth man, a predatory figure they might have met after the game. Someone with a car who led them, perhaps under a pretext, or even duress up the mountain. This could explain the deliberate drive, the extra miles. It could explain why they left the car so readily if they were following orders. And it could explain why Ted Weir was too terrified to leave the cabin or even make noise by hammering open cans. He was hiding. Then, there is the ghost that haunts this case more than any other, Gary Mathias, the Army veteran with schizophrenia. Did the stress of being lost trigger a severe psychotic break? Did he, in a state of paranoid delirium, convince the others they were in danger, leading them on a frantic, fatal retreat up the mountain? This is a theory that seems to fit, until you remember that Ted Weir survived for weeks alone. If Gary was the threat, what happened to him? Did he and Jack Hewitt meet a different fate? The Yuba County Five is not a single mystery, it is a nest of them. A riddle of the wrong turn wrapped in the mystery of the untouched food inside the enigma of two men who simply cease to exist. It is a story where every answer only leads to a more terrifying question. In the end, the story of the Yuba County Five is a devastating tapestry woven from the threads of cruel coincidence and catastrophic circumstance. A series of wrong turns in this impenetrable dark. A snowbank that acted like a trap. A cabin that transformed from a promise of salvation into a sealed tomb. Its life-saving supplies sitting just out of reach, like a mirage. But the official record is just the skeleton. The true, enduring horror is etched into the final moments we can only piece together in our nightmares. Picture the decision, the interior of the Mercury growing cold, their breaths fogging the windows. A debate, perhaps frantic, perhaps eerily calm, happening in that stuck car. A collective fatal choice to abandon their only shelter, to venture out into a freezing alien wilderness wearing little more than their hopes. Hear the crunch of their footsteps in the deep snow during that long, desperate walk. A walk that led them not to safety, but to a different kind of end. And then Ted Weir, alone in that silent cabin. We can only imagine his vigil, the slow, agonizing torture of hope fading day by day, listening for the sound of a rescue that never came. Watching the stacks of food not as a sustenance, but a taunting momentum to a world that has somehow become inaccessible. Did he simply lose the strength, or did he, in his own isolation, lose the very understanding of how to save himself? This story endures because it preys on one of our most primal fears. It's not just the fear of getting lost, it's the terror of the domino effect. The chilling reality that a single small inexplicable decision, a missed turn, a choice to walk instead of stay, can trigger an unstoppable chain reaction, leading to a catastrophic and irreversible end. The Yuba County Five reminds us that the veil between our safe, orderly world and the utter mindless chaos that lies beneath it is terrifyingly thin. Sometimes it's as thin as a Forest Service sign. Sometimes it's as thin as the lid of a can. The car is gone now, the cabin still stands, but if you listen closely in the winds that sweep through the Plumas National Forest, you can almost hear it, the echo of five friends and the silence that followed them. If these stories of the lost and the forgotten stay with you, consider subscribing. And until next time, I'm Mimi, and this has been a step behind the yellow tape.